The acrid smell of smoke stung my nostrils as water roared from our hoses, dousing the charred, twisted remains of what was once a pristine white vinyl fence. Through the mist of spray and heat, I caught sight of Patricia Donovan, the self-proclaimed Queen of Riverside Meadows, storming out of her house like a tornado in a pink bathrobe and fuzzy slippers. Her face was redder than the glowing embers we were extinguishing, and her voice hit a pitch that could have shattered glass. "You've destroyed my property," she screeched, pointing a manicured finger at my crew. My crew chief, Lieutenant Thompson, didn't even flinch. He just kept directing the hose, his voice calm as a summer breeze. "Ma'am, you're the one who called 911 reporting a fire. The damage was already done." I couldn't help but smirk behind my gear, thinking to myself, she had this coming. But let me back up and tell you how we got here, because this story, it's a wild ride. My name's Jake Morrison, and I've been a firefighter with Station 12 for 8 years. I'm no stranger to chaos fires, car wrecks, you name it, I've seen it. But nothing prepared me for the inferno of petty drama I walked into. When I moved to Riverside Meadows 2 months ago, I just bought a cozy little house on Maple Grove Drive, a quiet street in a subdivision that seemed like the perfect place to settle down after years of bouncing between apartments. The houses were neat, the lawns were green, and the neighbors waved like they actually meant it. It felt like a slice of suburban paradise. That is, until I met Patricia Donovan, president of the Riverside Meadows Homeowners Association and the most insufferable, power-hungry person I've ever had the misfortune of crossing paths with. The trouble started my very first weekend. The neighborhood, as part of my job, I'm required to take home the department's rapid response vehicle during my on-call shifts. It's a red Ford F-350 pickup, modified with emergency lights, a small water tank, and some basic firefighting gear. Not a full fire engine, but enough to get to a scene fast. I parked it in my driveway next to my personal car, a beat-up Jeep I've had since college, and thought nothing of it. I'd done this in every neighborhood I'd lived in, and no one ever batted an eye. Emergency vehicles are usually exempt from petty parking rules, right? Round out the next morning, I stepped outside to find a bright yellow notice tucked under the truck's windshield wiper. It was an HOA violation notice, accusing me of parking an unsightly industrial vehicle in a residential area. The fine? A cool $100. I chuckled, thinking it was a mix-up. I mean, come on, it's a fire department vehicle. I figured I'd swing by the whole office, show them my department paperwork, and clear it up. So, that afternoon, I strolled down to Patricia's house, which loomed at the end of the cul-de-sac like a fortress guarding her self-appointed kingdom. She answered the door in what I'd later learned was her signature look, a pastel blazer, over yoga pants, blonde hair teased so high it could have blocked the sun. I introduced myself, all smiles and politeness, and started explaining the situation. She didn't let me get 3 sentences in. With a dismissive wave of her hand, she cut me off. "I don't care if you're a firefighter, a police officer, or the Pope himself," she snapped, her voice sharp enough to cut steel. "The rules are the rules. No commercial or industrial vehicles are allowed in driveways overnight. It brings down property values, and we have standards here." I tried to explain that the truck wasn't commercial, it was a city-owned emergency vehicle, required to be accessible for my job. She wasn't having it. "You should have thought about that before moving into a neighborhood with class," she sneered, then slammed the door in my face so hard I felt the breeze. I went home, a little stunned, but still thinking I could reason with her. I dug through the HOA covenants, a 50-page monstrosity of rules that read like a dictator's manifesto. Sure enough, buried in subsection 12.4 was a clause banning commercial vehicles. But right there, in black and white, was an exemption for emergency service vehicles. I highlighted it, made copies, and even got a letter from my fire chief explaining the truck's purpose. I sent it all to Patricia via certified mail, thinking that'd be the end of it. Spoiler alert, it wasn't. 2 days later, another yellow notice appeared on my truck. This time, the fine was $300, and the violation claimed my vehicle was leaking fluids and damaging the driveway. Complete nonsense. The truck was practically brand new, inspected weekly, and cleaner than my kitchen. I started to realize I wasn't dealing with a reasonable person. Patricia had too much time on her hands and a power complex the size of a fire engine. Things went downhill fast. Patricia launched what I can only describe as a full-on harassment campaign. She'd stand at the edge of my property, snapping photos every time I drove in or out, She filed complaints about the truck's backup beeper when I left for emergency calls at 5 a.m. She even tried to get the city to revoke my occupancy permit, claiming I was running a commercial operation out of my house because I had firefighting gear in my garage. It was relentless. Every week brought a new fine, a new complaint, a new headache. I started keeping a detailed log of every interaction, every notice, every snide comment. On my captain's advice, build a case. Jake, he said, this lady sounds like she's gonna push it too far. She did. The situation escalated when my crew started coming over. Firefighters are a tight-knit bunch, and after a long shift, we often hang out to decompress, grill some burgers, watch a game, swap stories. The first time the guys came to my place, we were in the backyard flipping steaks when Patricia marched over, camera in hand, like she was auditioning for a reality show, an authorized commercial gathering. She barked, snapping photos of us like we were criminals. This is a residential neighborhood, not a fire station. My buddy Danny, who's got a knack for diffusing tension, tried to lighten the mood. Ma'am, it's just a barbecue. Want a burger? Her face turned the color of a ripe plum. I'll have your badges, she sputtered. My brother-in-law is on the city council. You'll all be jobless by the time I'm done. She stormed off, but not before vowing to make our lives miserable until the truck was gone. True to her word, Patricia cranked up the crazy. She called the cops every time we gathered, even if we were just watching football inside. She reported our cars for being an inch over the sidewalk line. She even called the health department, claiming we were running an illegal restaurant. Because she saw us carrying grocery bags, each complaint was more absurd than the last. But each one meant dealing with inspectors, filling out paperwork, or explaining ourselves to some city official. It was exhausting, but I kept documenting. Everything, dates, times, witnesses, even recordings of her rants when I could get them. I had a gut feeling she'd cross the line eventually, and I wanted to be ready. That line got crossed on a sticky Thursday afternoon in July. I was off duty, tinkering in my garage on a woodworking project, the coffee table I was building for my sister, when I heard sirens. At first, I didn't think much of it. Sirens are background noise when you're a firefighter, but they got louder, closer, until I realized they were headed here. Suddenly, engine 12 my station's primary unit roared around the corner. Followed by the other trucks, they screeched to a stop right in front of my house. I ran outside, heart pounding, as Captain Roberts jumped down from the engine, looking as confused as I felt. Morrison, what the hell's going on? He asked. We got a call about an active structure fire at this address. I shook my head, dumbfounded. Cap, there's no fire. I've been in the garage all day. We both turned to look across the street, where Patricia stood on her porch, arms crossed. A smug smile plastered on her face. My stomach sank. The crew followed protocol, sweeping my property for any signs of fire or smoke as they checked the backyard. One of the newer guys, Tommy, was navigating around my grill area when he accidentally bumped a small container of tiki torch fuel I left on a side table. The fuel spilled onto the ground near the fence line, and a stray ember from my earlier grilling, still hot in the ash, ignited it. A flame shot up, about 3 feet high, catching some dry leaves and spreading to Patricia's side of the fence. Her precious white vinyl fence started to melt, the plastic warping and blackening as the flames licked up its surface. My crew reacted like the pros they are, deploying a hand line and extinguishing the fire in seconds. But the damage was done. 8 feet of fence was charred, and Patricia's perfectly manicured hedges were singed and smoking. She came running over, screaming like a banshee, "You did this on purpose. This is arson. I want them all arrested." She whipped out her phone, recording us and demanding badge numbers. Captain Roberts stayed cool as ever, calling for the police to respond, which is standard when there's property damage on a call. While we waited, Roberts pulled up the dispatch info on his tablet. "Man," he said, his voice steady, "the call came from you. You reported visible flames and heavy smoke at this address. Can you show me where you saw this fire?" Patricia's smugness wavered. "Well, I smelled smoke earlier," she stammered. "There must have been a fire somewhere." But when the police arrived, Officer Jana Sullivan, one of my favorite cops to work with, listened to the 911 recording. In it, Patricia claimed she saw large flames consuming the back of the house and was in fear for her life from the spreading inferno. Sullivan's face hardened. "Mom, did you actually see a fire when you made this call?" she asked. Patricia tried to backtrack, mumbling about smoke and assumptions, but the recording was crystal clear. She lied through her teeth. Sullivan cited her on the spot for making a false 911 call, a misdemeanor with hefty consequences. Patricia tried to pivot, demanding I be arrested for the fence damage, but Roberts explained that the fuel spill was an accident. During a legitimate emergency response, her response: if she hadn't made the false call, we wouldn't have been there. The officers made it clear the damage was a direct result of her own illegal actions. The fallout was glorious. Patricia filed a claim with her homeowner's insurance for the fence. They denied it faster than you can say karma, citing the police report that pinned the damage on her false call. She tried billing the fire department, but the city attorney shut that down, reminding her she was lucky to avoid felony charges. Word spread like wildfire through the neighborhood. Mrs. Chen, my next-door neighbor and a retired teacher with a knack for gossip, filled me in on the HOA's emergency meeting. Patricia tried to spin the story, claiming I'd orchestrated the whole thing as revenge. But when the board saw the police report, my stack of harassment complaints, and realized the HOA could be liable for her actions as president, they voted unanimously to boot her out. The fines against me were rescinded, and the HOA issued a formal apology. They even amended their rules to explicitly allow emergency vehicles, calling them a neighborhood safety asset. Patricia's legal troubles didn't end there. She pleaded no contest to the false 911 charge in court. The judge, clearly fed up with her antics, sentenced her to 100 hours of community service, specifically with our fire department's public education program. The irony of her teaching fire safety to kids wasn't lost on anyone. She also got a year of probation, a $2,000 fine, and had to cover my legal fees, which had racked up to $3,000. The last time I saw her was in court, her face a mix of shock and defeat as the judge laid down the hammer. It was a moment I'll never forget. But the story doesn't end there. With Patricia gone, Riverside Meadows felt like a different place. The whole meetings, once her personal stage, became civil discussions about actual neighborhood issues. My crew still comes over for barbecues, and now neighbors join us, bringing their own burgers and stories. Mrs. Chan even started a firefighter appreciation day in the subdivision, complete with a potluck and kids waving little plastic fire hats. As for me, I'm still parking my rapid response truck in the driveway. No yellow notices in sight. Every time I look at that melted fence, I can't help but smile. Sometimes justice burns brighter than any fire.